just really excited to be talking with you. I like to reread as much of like a book as I can before I interview an author, and then just reliving that book. Your book is it's amazing. I really loved it. I also
You.
just some preface into this too. I went to an all-girls Catholic school for high
Mhm.
school, and then I did Catholic private school until like from when I was in second grade to literally senior year. So a lot of the moments I was like, this
Dang.
is so relatable. And I was like, oh my gosh, they did this stuff too. And like in retrospect, looking back at like a lot of the stuff that happened in high school in that environment, I was like, this should not have been allowed. Like
Yeah.
this is crazy. So yes, a
Yeah.
lot of the moments, especially with like the rules for like prom and like I went to an all-girls school in like California, so people were like out and like out, but the school was like, no, you guys cannot do this, cannot do that. So it was
Mm.
just, I think, cathartic to read like your book and then to just have those experiences. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so we'll get into that a little more later. But I want to thank everyone again for coming to our event. A lot of our members are again like in school right now. I know it's 4:30 on like a Tuesday. So I'm excited that Fable is helping us out by recording this and then making it available for any members who are not able to come, which no worries. And also today is Dia de los Muertos. I almost forgot again. So happy day too. And I wish I was
Ew.
at home right now. I couldn't like find, I was rushing to find like the marigolds, but none of the stores here have them. So I was like, damn, but just
Oh.
also happy holiday to everyone who celebrates. And yeah, so it's just again like awesome that we get to talk about your story and then a lot of the great elements of it too on like this day. So oh,
Yes,
coincidence
I love
like my
that.
yeah,
Yes.
super exciting. Oh my gosh, I'm like I have like a little nervous energy because I'm a fan. I seriously like loved your book so much,
Thank
but
you.
I just have a lot of the questions I'm gonna ask, but we're just gonna kind of get into everything. So good evening, everyone. I'm Selene, also known as Girl Reads, and thank you all for coming to our Not Your Side Character book club author event. That's the name of our club. And our book club on Fable began reading together in May of last year, and we focus primarily on discussing diverse YA reads. And if you haven't already, you can please join our club and start reading and discussing with us on the platform. And on the Fable app, we're able to like read and share annotations and start conversations inside the book, which is kind of like Wattpad for like bestsellers. I don't know if you're familiar with Wattpad. It was a
Yeah.
moment. Yeah, okay. It was a moment back in the day. So it's kind of like that, but with bestsellers and amazing books like yours, which I know is going to become a bestseller because I'm obsessed with it. And today I'm honored to be welcoming the incredible author of our latest read, The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School, Sonora Reyes. And I'm going to read their bio. So Sonora currently lives in Arizona in a multi-generational family home with a small pack of dogs who run the place. So relatable. I have a pack at my house too, a lab, a German Shepherd, and a Maltipoo, and they own everything. And outside of writing, Sonora loves dancing, singing karaoke, and playing with their baby nephew. You can find Sonora on Twitter at Sonora Reyes and get exclusive updates and blog posts by subscribing to their blog. Which I'm going to turn my phone off, which I thought I did, but getting ahead of myself. And I'm beyond excited to be having this conversation with you, Sonora. And I want to thank you again for being here with us tonight. So yay,
Of
thank you.
course. I'm excited.
Yes. Okay, and I'm gonna get into our questions right
Okay.
now. So we loved reading The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School together. And for some of our newer members who might not be familiar with your works, how would you describe the books you write? Is there a specific community that you write for?
Yeah. So for my first book and my second book, which comes out in May, they're both like contemporary with like romantic elements, but they're not romance. And they're both queer and they both star like Mexican protagonists. While they're both very different books, all my books, even the ones that are not going to be contemporary, they're pretty much all going to be queer Mexican books. Like, even if it's like high fantasy or something, they'll be Mexican coded. Like,
Yes, yes, yes. I am obsessed.
yeah. So I'm kind of all over the place with like what kinds of books I write. Like, my first couple books are all going to be contemporary, but I'm also writing other stuff. So I'm kind of like
Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. Like, hopefully I can publish the other stuff too. And but it's all gonna be queer Mexican books. And I
That's
definitely write for, you know, queer people, people of color, like anyone who's like on the margins or feels like they're not represented, and wants to just like see like the representation, or like anyone who just like has um I write for like a lot of people, but like I think honestly like anyone can enjoy like any book, like if you are in the right headspace for it. But like I think that a lot of the times my book is for a very specific type of person. Like each book is for somebody different. Like my first book is for like the Catholic school lesbians or the queer Catholic school kids, you know, like anyone like queer, especially queer people of color who went to Catholic school. That's the first book was for that. While it's also for like any queer people, any like people of color, anyone who like wants to see themselves represented, or anyone who just wants to read a book that is about that. It's for them too. But then yeah, my second book is more for like, it's like a Me Too book. It's like revenge, and it's like more for like that catharsis, like people who want like to see some douchebags getting what's coming to them.
I am so excited to read it because you wrote a lot of scenes with like revenge or just like slick comebacks, and like sometimes authors can make it like cringe, and I'm like, oh, that was kind of cringe, but you did such a good job at like making it very realistic. And Yami, I love her, I'm obsessed. But
Oh,
yeah, I'm just super excited to hear more about what you're doing. And I feel like the niche that you wrote this book for is very specific, but also there's not a lot of books I think that speak to that niche. So yeah, and like I feel like anyone could enjoy this book because it's also just super beautiful, entertaining, it's funny, it's emotional, and it's very realistic. So yeah, I'm obsessed again for the thousandth time. And so what exactly inspired you to write the Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School? Is there a specific event or person that drew you to creating these characters and setting?
yeah. So it's kind of funny. I started writing it for National Novel Writing Month,
Ooh.
actually, and I was going to write a completely different book.
Mhm.
I had always written like fan fiction before I ever wrote anything original. The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School was the first original book I ever wrote. And it wasn't what I was planning on writing. I was planning on writing like this really high like concept, like fantasy, like sci-fi fantasy book that
Yeah.
was going to be so like ambitious, and the world was just so like complex and everything.
Mhm.
And I didn't have time to
It's
put
a
that all
lot,
together in
yeah.
a month.
That's a lot.
So like October like 26th came across, and I was like, I can't do this book. I need to write about something that like I don't have to research, that I don't have to stop and like look things up every 5 seconds, that I can just like write about something that I know intimately, that I can just talk about for 50,000 words. And so I was like, what if I write some of my trauma and like
Process, yeah.
some, just sprinkle a little bit of trauma on the page. And like, yeah. So I was like, what if I just like write something that I really know? And like, I had been feeling like I was ready at that point to explore some of that, which I hadn't really explored until I wrote that book.
Yeah.
I never really talked about any of that stuff. And then writing the book was really like healing for me to be able to like explore a lot of those experiences and like those feelings that I had back then. And it's not like a self-insert book, like Yummy is not me, like by any means, but I wore a hat that was very similar to Yami's hat at one point in my life, if that makes any sense.
Yes. No, I know exactly what you mean. And I feel like you can just kind of tell that it's like very like again like realistic. Like this isn't just something that you're like, I wonder if this will be like this and I'm just gonna make it like this. And Yami's journey is just very realistic, and like how she kind of comes to terms with things and like heals. Like her healing journey is, I'm obsessed again. I need to find a new word, but it's just
Obsessed is a good word.
you're like keep using it. Yeah, it's really good. And okay,
Yeah,
this
I like
is having
it.
a little fan moment, but you mentioned you wrote fan fiction. What kind of fandoms did you write? For? I want to be on the
Um,
spot. Yeah.
so I did all of it. Like I didn't just do fan fiction. I made the music videos. I made
The
memes.
edit.
I
Oh
made
my gosh.
yeah, like all of it. I
You
did all of it.
fandoms. Yeah. Editors carry fandoms. Like if you edit videos, you're carrying.
Yeah, I had like several music videos. And so like the fan fiction that I wrote was mostly for Young Justice and DC Comics.
Obsessed. Yes.
Like DC Comics in general, but specifically the young superheroes that were in Young Justice, like those are my favorite characters. And so I would like write about them mostly. But then when I did like video edits and stuff, it was like that plus Avatar The Last Airbender, plus like I did a couple for like Voltron.
Okay.
And I did, but it was mostly Young Justice because I love Young Justice so much.
Love Young Justice. I love all of those shows. I think Young Justice definitely was like a big phase. I was like, because my dad, like, we grew up watching a lot of like DC,
Mhm.
like just Justice League, like the old kind of Justice Leagues and
Yeah.
Young Justice. I was like, oh my gosh. So it's so crazy that you wrote fan fiction for Young Justice. And
Yeah.
yeah, I did not
um,
even know that like existed on the internet, which I'm gonna read.
yeah, I deleted all of it,
Oh
but
no.
because like I was like, well, maybe I can use some of this for original stuff at some
Oh
point.
yeah.
So I'm like, maybe I should just delete it just in case.
Yeah.
So it's all gone now, but maybe it'll come back in a published book one day. Who knows?
We got to talk about that. Yeah, because that would be, I feel like a lot of great books come from fan fiction too, or a lot of like popular books have like origins in fan fiction. So
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
just great. Yeah, all great authors wrote fan fiction. That is,
Yeah.
and okay, so I also went to private school, all girls. Woohoo! And I really noticed how realistic the environment of Sladen was. Are there any specific scenes in the book that like actually happened or were directly influenced from your experience at private school?
Yes.
You're like, yes.
Um, so three scenes come to mind immediately. The first one is the scene where Jenna and Karen are calling Yami's earrings ghetto.
Oh, I
And
was
they're
heated.
like,
I
oh
was
my
so
God, like I love you, but you look so ghetto right now,
I
or
was
like that. And like that definitely happened to me. um
like,
yeah. And another the other two, so I kind of based Bo's character more off of who I was in high school versus Yami's character. Because I was more like Bo in high school. Like I was like very outspoken and like very like I was the one who gave the abortion presentation. Like I I did that in high
that
school.
is play because just the environment of that, like there were even times where like in like biology class, I had like a professor who gave us like an extreme in-depth PowerPoint on like abortion and told us to vote pro-life and like just a
Oh
lot
my
of there was no space for like conversation, so that like that
yeah.
scene I found like really like powerful, and I was like, okay, here's that healing kind of some of the stuff I went through just because no one really did that, so it was just great I think to see that scene, and then also to hear that like you did that is like yeah.
Yeah, I was like, because it was for like homeroom. So it wasn't for like language arts. It was for homeroom. And we had to do like a persuasive presentation, like public speaking. And I don't know what it was. I think back then I was like addicted to like controversy and just like seeing people get mad.
Yeah.
And I think it was part of because I just really didn't want to be a Catholic school. Like I went to public school my whole life up until high school. And then I got sent to Catholic school and I was like pissed about it and I didn't want to be there. And like I hated it. And like every day I would like beg my parents to send me back to public school. And so like I think I was just like a little rebel. Like every chance I got, I was like, I'm just gonna shake things up a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I the other scene that was based on real life was the scene where Bo gets in a fight with the priest. Um, yeah, I also did that,
Yeah.
but it was not at school, it was at church camp in real life.
Church camps.
So we were stuck together for like a week.
That is that's a power move. No, that thing was also we would do that too. We're like confession would be set up in like the gym, and so everyone would go up and talk to like a different priest in front of everyone else. And
Yeah,
say,
yeah, you can like
yeah.
kind of overhear sometimes if they're
Oh my gosh,
talking
I
loud.
know. I was like, and then some people would be like crying or just,
Yeah, people would be crying like,
and I was like, but did you go to church camp? And like those camps were also just what is going on, but
oh my God.
yeah.
I could write like 10 books about the trauma that I experienced at church camp. Like it was so bad. Like, oh my God, church camp.
No, and I would read them all because it is it's a lot, but I could tell as like someone who went to private school definitely wrote this book. So I was like,
Yeah.
I can tell they went to private school because this is a little too accurate, and these things
Yeah.
actually happen. And okay, we spoke a lot about these amazing characters. So how do you create these like complex individuals? Because I feel like all of your characters are incredibly like complex, and they're not just all like one specific way, which I feel like in a lot of like books, especially sometimes with YA in general, a lot of characters who are not the main character are very like one-dimensional, or they're just kind of there. So all of your characters are incredibly complex. Are there any processes that you go through or you went through in order to write your characters?
So my characters actually in my first draft
Mhm.
start out pretty simple. Like I always knew Yami's character really well. Like I always knew she was gonna be like someone who like knew she was beautiful, but like still had her
I love that.
like she was confident but also insecure at the same time over like other things. How I knew she was gonna have like all this pressure on her to like take care of her brother. I knew that she was going to be like, you know, that eldest child syndrome.
Mm.
And from there I made Cesar, who I knew him maybe even better than I knew Yami. So I started with those two. And Cesar was always gonna be like this happy kid on the surface. Like you think he's like always joking around. He's always like, you know, making fun of something or like just being silly. But then he has these anger issues. Like he's getting in fights and he's, you know, doing these things that are not lining up with the persona he puts on. So I always knew that, and I knew that I was gonna explore that a little bit um in the book. I didn't know exactly how, but from the beginning I knew those two characters. Um and then Bo got a lot more fleshed out as I wrote it. Because at first I just knew she was going to be Yami's foil. I knew she was going to be like proud in all the places where Yami was insecure and insecure in the places where Yami was proud. And like they were just going to kind of complement each other in that way. And that like Bo was going to help Yami to see like kind of what it could look like to be like out and open and unapologetic and all of that, and help Yami with her growth. But I'll be honest, in the first draft, she kind of was a little bit manic pixie dream girl.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to flesh her out a little bit more like in later drafts. Like I added her own insecurities and her own like issues that she has with, you know, everything, like especially with like her because she's Chinese, she's adopted by white parents for anyone who doesn't know. And so her and Yami have like a little bit of camaraderie when it comes to that, like because they both feel kind of like othered from their own heritage in a way. um so that was something that kind of came later, and then everyone else just was like, well, I need you for this reason, so you're going to be like that, and I need you for this reason, so you're like
So you're gonna
that.
be there. We're gonna be there.
Yeah. And then I like fleshed them out like that. But also, you know who else was like started out as a very, very like small thing and now like is one of my favorite characters is Hunter.
I love him too. I love him. He was just I was like, oh, here we go. But then
Yeah,
it's becoming
poor
like
baby,
he
poor
has like a
sweet
little
poor
special
child.
place in
I
my heart.
love him
Yeah.
so much. Like he started out being in like one scene. Like he was only in the scene where he asked Yami to homecoming and that was it. And then I was like, I need more of this guy. So I put him
Yeah.
in like
So
her art
he's
class. And I
yeah.
put him like, you know, I just like stuck him in different places. And I was like, I need a little bit more of this guy because he's funny. So
Oh, Hunter, like he popped up and I was like, oh, Hunter, like what are you doing
yeah.
here? You're beautiful. Like he's just
Yeah.
yeah. I thought just like all of your characters, like a lot of you I could tell you put a lot of like thought into like the characters, and just like there would be little pieces and like little scenes, and then they'd come back and connect. And so not a lot of like things just kind of popped out of the blue. Like if you really like read the book and paid attention, like most of the things you could kind of tell like were part of their characters. So like nothing was like out of like character. I don't know if that like makes sense. I guess because
Yeah.
books like characters will do the most random stuff, and I'm like, why would you do that? But a lot of
Yeah.
times like their characters, it just like made sense. Like nothing did
Yeah.
not make sense. That was an interesting sentence, but everything
Yeah, no,
just
it makes sense because like I think I wanted it to be that if anything felt out of character, that reading it a second time you'd be like, oh, that makes sense.
yeah, like I get it now.
So like maybe at the first time you're reading it, you're like, why are they doing that? But then like once you read the whole thing and you know the character a little bit better, like if you were to ever read it again, you'd be like, you would understand. That was my goal.
This
So
is a book that like I could definitely just reread over and over, which I'll come back to that in another question in like a little bit. And then we're gonna go back to the characters again. Which one of your characters do you think you would be like best friends with, like your ride or die? I know it's hard to pick one. You're like, oh.
it's so hard to pick one. Probably Cesar.
Mhm.
Like he is probably my favorite character. Um, but also Bo. Like I feel like would just be so fun.
Bo is a real one. They're all just very real. I feel like Yami and I would get along like very well. I don't know. I just all of the people that are friends and cool in the book, I feel like I would just be really close with. And then on the other hand, which one, I feel like it's kind of an easy answer, but which one of your characters would you have like beef with? Like if you saw them in like a party or something, you'd go, or you'd be like, you need to get them out of here. You just
Like
have like,
anyone in the book.
yes.
Bianca.
Fair. Bianca, she sucks.
Yeah,
Like,
I would.
you suck. Like you're the worst.
Yeah,
And
I
there would be
know
like a
that.
lot of yeah. No, you go, yes.
Oh yeah, like I know that Yami might not have the um ability to go and smack her, but I would do it for her.
There were a lot of times where I was like, this girl needs to get punched.
Yeah, she really did.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm not in high school, but if no one sees it, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Like she sucked. She was the worst. And her mom too. I was like, even your mom is fake, like you're fake. Probably Karen. I did not like Karen.
Yeah, oh Karen was the
Karen,
worst.
Karen just in general, we would just never cross paths. But
Yeah.
I'd beat
Karen
them.
might be worse than Bianca actually.
I feel like Bianca might be worse because they were like besties.
Yeah, Bianca is definitely more like backstabbing and Karen is more like
Just yeah.
just not
Yeah.
a great person, just
She-
like in general.
yeah. And Yami is so strong though, because I think when Bianca like texted her, I was like, I miss you. And then she blocked her.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, I love her. I love Yami. Like she's
Yeah.
the best. Because I was like, if she goes back or something, then I'm gonna have to put the book down. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I kind of wanted the reader to be like, is she gonna? Like, what's she
No,
gonna
because it was there. Because I was like, I would have kind of gotten it if she did a little bit. Because like, it wouldn't best friend. Because like, I think
Yeah, it's
like, they
hard.
had, like a good friendship and everything.
Yeah.
And like, a lot of the conversations are like talks that they had where it was like, can you be like queer and still like have like female friends or like that kind of like friendship level? Like, obviously, that friendship was still like there and everything. So then I was like, ugh. The nostalgia, what if she goes back? And it was just like this tension. And then when she blocked her, I was like, good.
Yeah.
Like,
One thing I really tried to do with this book that I like didn't realize I was trying to do when I was writing it, but then after I wrote it, I was like, oh, I did that and now I want to like make that like really shine through is with Yami, I wanted her to be empowered to not forgive everybody,
yeah.
you know? So like when it came to Karen and Jenna and Bianca, like she didn't have to like say like, oh, it's okay, like yeah, like we were best friends and I forgive you, or like with Karen, like she didn't have to like she as soon as they said the like ghetto comment, she's like, okay, we're not
Bye.
friends anymore. Like we're
Yeah.
not going to do this. I'm going to find other friends. Like even if it was hard for her, like I wanted to give her that power to like be able to say like we're not gonna we're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
And not everybody deserves to be redeemed or forgiven. So
Yeah, that was also great because again, I feel like in a lot of like young adult books that I've read, there's always like you have to be the bigger person and you have to like forgive them even though they might not, they're ignorant or like they were mean to you or something. And it's like you don't. You really like you don't have to forgive anyone. Like
yeah.
it's not on you to like forgive them. So I didn't even really notice that until you just pointed it out right now. But I also noticed that too right now. And that's just great.
Yeah. And like oh, I lost my train of thought.
You're good.
Sorry.
No,
It's
that
gone.
happens to me all the time. I've definitely had like conversations and interviews like this where I'm just like, so
Yeah.
when it comes back to you, if it comes back to you, we can always come back. But
Okay.
just just very, very just well written Yami again.
Thank
And
you.
okay, again, back to Yami. Why did you choose to tell her story in the YA genre? Is there a reason you were pulled specifically to kind of write for young adults?
Yeah, I feel like this story had to take place in high school. Um, and I really wanted it to be coming of age. Like I wanted it to be her coming, because I guess it could have been college, like but I wanted it to be like a very like YA coming of age arc where she like comes into like her own two shoes, like when she just kind of like realizes that she is who she is and like that's okay and everything is great and like, well, not everything is great, but you know what I mean.
Not everything is great, but no, I know what you mean, yeah. So
Yeah, like so I want, and I also feel like it was the book that I needed when I was a teenager.
yeah.
Like, so I think I really wanted to write my first book as YA to kind of fill that void that I was missing. Not that there are no other books that like would fill that void today, but like I wanted to fill it for myself.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I'm also just thinking back to like who Selene was in high school and like who like my friends were, people I know. And I feel like this book would have like been so incredibly like helpful to like a lot of people and like myself too. So it's just great that I thank you for writing this book. And I'm happy that it exists. And I think it's gonna help a lot of people heal with their trauma and also just read a great book. So I think it's very fitting and it's not like cringe or like anything or it's not too out of like the age range. It's just perfect for young adults and you wrote in a way that's also really digestible for a lot of young people. And this is kind of leading into the next question. Your book contains a lot of like nuance, whether in regards to Mexican American culture, attending a predominantly white private school as a person of color, mental health, and even adoption, which shows great knowledge and care revolving around these difficult topics. What do you think was the kind of hardest part of, I guess like when I say like research, I mean just kind of like thinking and planning things out and being like, okay, I'm gonna unpack this in this kind of way instead of going like in this route. So what do you think was the kind of hardest part of that?
I think the hardest part was, I don't want to give spoilers. There is a scene
Yes.
with a character
Yes.
that that I had to really pour out a lot of my own feelings and um thoughts like regarding mental health, and it was really hard to, I guess this isn't like research, but I was using my own experience and like my own like built up stuff that I just hadn't ever written or talked about in so long, like, or ever. Um, that was probably the hardest part. And then like, oh my God, can I tell a little story about that?
Yes, please.
So that scene, I don't know if you know what part I'm talking about.
I think I do.
Okay, okay. So I was writing that part. It's like 75% of the way through the book, I think.
Yes.
And then I finished writing it and I was like, I'm done for the day. Now I can go relax, have some hot chocolate, like
Yeah.
decompress. And then when I go to save the file, I realize it's corrupted.
No.
So the file got corrupted, and my last save was like, I don't know, 30, 50 pages prior. I
No.
lost all of it and I had to redo it. I
That
was
is
so upset.
I feel like you have to be in such like a headspace to kind of do that to and revisit a lot of like hard
Mhm.
things. And then you're like, okay, we're good. And then to have to like do it all over again and you don't have like
Yeah.
the first draft or whatever as like reference to. Oh god. And like if it's the scene that I'm thinking about, that I literally like could not put it down, but I had to because I was like, oof, oof.
Yeah.
It was just pouring out. But I could imagine that definitely being like an extremely difficult like topic. And then also I just kind of want to talk about how you have this entire like conversation or like you were again, I think I talked about how you wrote the book so well for like young adults and you introduced a lot of these topics to like I definitely didn't know nuance or anything really in like when I was a teen. So I think you did a great job of like giving like new perspective and like just opinions and like just I don't know, you just did such a great job. And like a lot of the stuff that I'm finally learning about in college, I was like, wow, you incorporated this so wonderfully in the book. And I think adoption was like a big part of it. And then how did you kind of get I guess like I don't know if inspiration is the right word, but like inspiration or knowledge to write kind of about like Bo's experience being a Chinese adoptee for like a white family. And like I love her family. Her parents are just amazing and they're just great. And then when she got like the courage to kind of speak up and like let them know kind of how she was feeling, I feel like that's not a lot of like that's not an experience that I've ever had to kind of think about. So it was just great. And I kind of wanted to know where you got a lot of like information kind of for that.
Yeah. So like again, going back to like the first draft, like I didn't know so much. I just knew that I knew from the beginning that Bo was going to be Chinese and that she was going to be adopted by white parents. And like at the time, like there wasn't really a reason for it. It wasn't like I was like, oh, well, I have all these ideas of like how she's going to feel about it and like all of that. It was just like I knew like that was just the character that I envisioned for her. I knew a lot of people who were like adopted, especially going to Catholic school, like not a lot, but a the percentage of people of color who were adopted by white parents in Catholic school versus the percentage of people who were adopted when I went to public school, it was like different, right?
Very yes.
So when I went to Catholic school, it was like a good amount of the people there, people of color who were there were adopted by white parents. Not like a lot of them, but it was like enough that it was like higher statistically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was a little bit of a thing. Um, so I did talk to some people, like some of my friends who were adopted by white parents and got their like input, and like one of them was like one of my earliest beta readers. And she was just telling me like because she's also Asian, and she was like telling me like all the things of like that she went through and like stuff, and we just like had a conversation like almost exactly like the conversation that Yami and Bo had. And then I just kind of put that conversation in there
That
in the
was
book.
a great conversation. It was like super just like well thought and like insightful. So I was like, I just wanted to bring that like up again. I was just like, I've been thinking about it. So I was like,
Oh.
handled it like really greatly. And like I get on like little rabbit holes on like TikTok and like that was like a rabbit hole I just went down like last week. So I
Oh,
was like,
really?
wow, it is so great to see that you kind of have this like again like representation and kind of education for people who might not be familiar with like what it means to be like adopted, especially as like a person of color to a white family. So I just thought that was like just super like wow. I was like, they're slaying again.
Yeah, thank you. And I did get like a couple of like sensitivity readers just like make sure that it was like, not inaccurate or offensive or anything like that. Because like I am not adopted by white parents, like
Yeah, you can't be like,
so
yeah.
yeah, so I wanted to make sure that it was like, even no matter how many people I talked to that are not sensitivity readers, like, and got their like input and like they read it and gave me like stories and stuff like that. But then like the sensitivity readers helped too, like to just like make sure that because they're looking at it from a different perspective of not necessarily like what's realistic, but what are some misconceptions that there are out there and stuff like that. So I thought that was important too.
That's also great that you got sensitivity readers because I feel like not all the authors want to put like the time and so that they're like, okay, a few people told me it was good, like let's let it roll. And then I've just seen like
Yeah.
backlash or just kind of how it could go down like a separate path. So again, as a reader, I appreciate that you did that too. Your writing choices are great. So thank you.
Thank you.
Then also on the other hand, I know we talked about some difficult kind of moments in writing this book. There are also just so many great and beautiful things in your book, like Yami and her family enjoying like meals together. I think there was like a time where her mom brought up like flautas, and that's my favorite food. So I was like, oh, that is
Yeah.
that is so great. And kind of I think that scene also where she shared her culture with Bo's family. What was your favorite part about I guess writing or the process of writing like those scenes for the book?
I think honestly, one of my favorite scenes in the book is when she's sharing her culture with Bo's family. When they go to the Baile Folklorico show. Um, I had a lot of feelings about that scene and like just like I remember being told, I'm not even sure if this answers your question, but I'm just gonna say it and then you can tell me if I did a good job or not.
Okay,
But like
yeah.
so like I remember having those feelings that Yami had. So like I did by the folklorico like really, really young. And I just remember like as an adult watching a baile folklorico show and thinking like of like the ancestors and like of like all of everything that had to like come together perfectly for this to happen and like how like I felt like I belonged there and just like I felt like I needed to put that to paper just like how Yami felt and like with especially with Bo and her parents there how she was like opening up and giving them like this little piece of her that she felt so proud of like her culture, you know?
Yeah.
So
That was a great answer. That was a literally beautiful, perfect answer. And I know exactly like what kind of feeling you're talking about because there's been times where like I've brought like my friends who are not like Mexican to like some of our stuff or even just like for dinner and like my mom's making like flautas because again that's like my favorite food or like enchiladas and then they're like trying or just like sharing that kind of experience and like it's with people who like will receive it and like appreciate it and then just like being like damn like we're cool like there's
yeah, it's
like, we're cool.
nice.
And I think also because Yami was like in a lot of the book, she's like the minority in like that school and like just not really feeling like she can truly just like be herself. And I think in that moment you could kind of tell she was like comfortable and happy. And I was just really happy for her. So yeah, there's just so many great, beautiful scenes that you have in that book and like just the way you write Mexican American culture too. Like obviously there are like some downsides and like to every culture as like every person does, but also you don't focus like entirely like on that, which I feel like sometimes it can get like lost like with books and just you just
Yeah.
did a great job of like incorporating all the beautiful elements too. And then before we get into our last few questions, I just want to remind our participants here that you can also drop any comments that you might have or questions in the chat. And then when we post the video for any club members who might have like further questions for the book, because I know so many people enjoyed it, I can also maybe send those over to you if you're comfortable with that and then just give them some little insight. But just putting that out because it's going to be in the recording for people to see. So recording people in the future, there's also that. And now we're going to get into some more authorish kind of writing advices questions. Do you have any advice on writing or even the publishing industry for young authors to be?
Yes. I think the okay, this is like my favorite advice to give is that no advice is for everybody.
Yeah.
So any advice you hear, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. And just keep in mind that most advice that's out there is for like, you know, neurotypical people. It might be for like a very specific kind of person that like would do well with this advice. And if that's not you, then that's okay. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. And like, you know, if for example, if people are like, oh, you have to write every day, but like you can't physically do that, that's okay. Or like if someone says you have to outline this way and you can't do that, like that doesn't mean your brain is broken. It just means that like you have to find what works for you. So yeah, I don't like prescriptive advice that's supposed to be for everybody, because I don't think any advice works for every single person in the world. Um, yeah, so I think that's my biggest piece of advice. And then like my second biggest piece of advice is like when you're writing, especially if you're writing to be published, just know what your like, how do I say this? Like what you want to get out there, and know like what you're willing to budge on and what you're not willing to budge on. Because like if you have a vision that's very specific and you know what you want to write, and you know that this is like, you won't even publish it if it's not going to be like that, like stick to your guns. But if you feel like your main goal is like you want to get a book out there, or you want to like get experience, or whatever it is, like just know like what your goal is, and like act accordingly to that. And like you're always gonna have to kind of budge with like little things, but
Yeah.
like pick your battles kind of thing. I don't know. That might be
Great
felt.
advice. I am not a writer. I am a reader, but that is just really good advice. I have a lot of friends who want to be writers, and I feel like especially the first part where, because I this is a question I ask every author I do an interview with, and it's always different. And I feel like that question just goes to show that like every piece of advice
Yeah,
is different and everyone is different. So what might work
everyone's
for
different.
one person will probably not work for the other person. So don't get too hard on
Exactly.
yourself when it doesn't.
Exactly.
That's such a great question. Oh, and then this is again another personal kind of for me thing. Your we have a comment. Oh, perfect. This kind of was literally the question I was about to ask.
Oh,
So
really?
Sarah wants to know, um, what is your favorite comfort food when you're writing? Do you like eat anything or like anything that you're like, ooh, this is just such a comfort food? I love that.
I like to eat snacks when I'm writing, but like I usually forget to eat when I'm writing. So I mostly have to have my water or coffee.
Yes.
Um, I know coffee isn't food, but it is very comforting, and it helps me to like wake up and get in the zone and stuff. So
That's That's great. I have to have coffee like every single day. And like I know my mom did not let me have coffee in high school. And I was like, what's the big deal? And I get it now. I get it.
nice.
It's kind of a lot. But
Good.
yeah, I had my question was about basically again kind of in the comfort kind of niche area. Your book has definitely become one of my comfort books, which I don't know how that makes you feel because it's a lot, but it's one of my comfort books. Do you have any comfort books, or were there any books that like kind of inspired you during your writing process?
Yes, I have a few comfort books. I really loved Donde Rosa Santos, which is a contemporary kind of like it's like the main characters, all the women in her family are like cursed that the men they fall in love with will be lost at sea. They'll die to the sea.
I'm
And
invested.
so she falls in love with a guy who owns a boat. Um, and you don't know what's gonna happen, but it's like kind of like throughout the book, you don't know if the curse is real or not.
Yeah.
So I really like that. I didn't think I would like it, but I did. I loved it a lot. Um, and Meet Cute Diary by Emery Lee. That one was like really cute. Um, it just like is very like fluffy and like got me out of a like a bad time. So I think that one was like really good for me. Um there's so many good ones. How can I narrow down?
No, I know
Um
exactly. Even whenever someone asks me for like a rec or like what is my favorite kind of this, I'm like, I have no idea. I have like 30 books.
yeah, it's like I gotta narrow it down. Like what, like instead of just like what's your like what is like a book that you recommend or something, it's gotta be like, okay, a book set in college or a book set in Florida or like, you know what I mean? I'm like, that I can do, that I can narrow down.
More specific, the better. But no, I know exactly what you mean. And I feel like with comfort books, it doesn't have to like, I love asking this question again because everyone's comfort book is different. I think I had asked like an author their comfort book and it was like something horror or like something bloody, gushy, good. And I was like, oh my gosh, we are on very different paths, which is
Yeah.
like super interesting to see. And then our last question, do you have, and I know we kind of talked about this earlier, do you have any or updates for your new books that are coming out, or your new book. Yes.
Yes. So I have two more books coming out next year. One is the Luis Ortega Survival Club, which actually, let me see if I can give a little pitch.
Yes, I think I had read a little bit about, or I saw like the cover, because the cover's out, right? I
Because
think I saw,
what?
is the cover's out, right?
Yes, the cover is
Okay,
out.
yeah. I saw the cover of the book. Beautiful, amazing. I love it. Again, which I'm also super excited to read, because if it's anything like this, and I mean just in like the writing style and the character building, I am gonna eat it up.
Thank you. I hope you like it. It is very different from the Lesbiana's Guide, like as far as tone goes and like the themes of the book. But I do hope that it still like feels like a Sonora Reyes book, you know?
And I feel like
So,
it's characterized mainly by like how you write, and especially
mhm.
like the characters and like the vibes. It's the
Yeah,
vibe, like
yeah,
the
for
vibe.
sure. Yeah, okay, so I got the pitch if you want the pitch for it. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so Ariana Ruiz wants to be noticed, but as an autistic girl who never talks, she goes largely ignored by her peers despite her bold fashion choices. So when cute, popular Louise starts to pay attention to her, Ari finally feels seen. Luis's attention soon turns to something more and they have sex at a party. While Ari didn't say no, she definitely didn't say yes. But before she has a chance to process what happened and decide if she even has a right to be mad at Luis, the rumor mill begins churning, thanks she's sure to Luis's ex-girlfriend, Shawnee. Boys at school now see Ari as an easy target, someone who will not say no. Then Ari finds a mysterious note in her locker, which eventually leads her to an unlikely group of students determined to expose Luis for the predator he is. To her surprise, she finds genuine friendship among the group, including her growing feelings for the very last girl she expected to fall for. But in order to take Luis down, she'll have to come to terms with the truth of what he did to her that night and risk everything to see justice done.
That sounds so good. The tone is very different,
Very
but
different. Yeah.
I want it so bad.
It's
It
very
sounds,
like revengey.
yes, we love a good revenge, especially against gross men. So
Yeah,
this,
yeah. So
I'm
I was joking with someone that like, oh, I'm gonna write a spin-off book that has Bianca and Luis and like this girl Jackie from another secret book that might come out sometime in the future. Who they're all horrible people and like they can all just die and it can be like not contemporary like romance. It can be like they're all just gonna die. Like
this sounds
horrible
like
death.
my kind of fan fiction. So
Yeah.
I read a fan fiction on your book, and it's just them
Yeah.
dying.
And then the other book that's coming out next year is Transmogrify. It's an anthology full of trans magic YA. Um,
Ooh,
so it was like a direct response to like, J.K. Rowling and that whole stuff. So it was like, what if like we write like a magic anthology where everyone is trans? Like
she would grab that and just burst into flames.
yeah,
So
and so all the authors are trans and
that's
so
awesome.
yeah, I'm really excited about that one too. I'm just like one of the contributors, so it's not like my book, but I have a story in there.
I love a good anthology, because sometimes you just need like a little piece instead of like a whole book. And I feel like,
Yeah.
especially with me for like school, I just might want like a little something. So I am
Mhm.
very excited for both of those, especially if they're written by you. And I
Yeah.
think we do have one more question before we're gonna close out.
Mhm.
Sandra, again, would like to know, what are your favorite Latinx authors? And then she went, aside from you. So yeah.
Okay, I love Aiden Thomas, like Cemetery Boys and specifically Cemetery Boys and the Sunbearer Trials I really, really loved.
I want
Um,
to read that so bad. I haven't
oh,
like
it's so
had
good.
a chance to start anything new, but like it looks so good. And
Yeah,
anything
it's really
like
good. I highly recommend it.
Spanish too, I'll eat it up. Yeah.
It's fun. And then Liz Huerta, I really loved The Lost Dreamer. I just read that like just now, like within the last couple weeks. Um, Emery Lee, I have to mention because Meet Cute Diary, I loved. Johnny Garzavia wrote 1500 Miles from the Sun, and I blurbed their second book, which comes out um next year in April, I think. And that one is so, so, so good. Like keep your eyes open for Ander and Santi We're Here, which comes out in 2023.
Oh, I will. Yes.
Yeah, it's so
Writing
good.
these all down. I'm literally doing it right now because those all just sound great. And I'm trying to like I also like I feel like I'm limited with time because of like school, but like I just want to like read more authors I feel like I can relate to, and like
Yeah.
especially like your books, like I just can't wait for like whenever anything will come out because I know I'm going to love it. So
Oh,
thank
thank
you
you.
for the recommendations again. Wonderful. And you guys check those people out. Check them
Yes,
out.
they're all so good.
Yes, like I will back them up. They're so good. And okay, if that's all we have for audience questions for now, if any more come in through after we post the video, I will also let you know, because this book just there's just so many great things you could say and like questions, and it's just such a great book for discussion and just to enjoy in general. But Sonora, I just want to thank you again for joining us. It was a pleasure to have this conversation about one of my favorite books with you, and I truly appreciate the wonderful insight you were able to share with us. And you can find out more about Sonora at their website, which I'm not going to say the link out because I'm going to mess it up, but we'll send that out to you. And thank you again, Sonora. And I hope everyone had a wonderful time. And then,
Thank you.
bye.
I had a great time. Thank you so much.
Bye.